Hi there, I just decided I'd make this video because I listened to a really interesting interview yesterday between the guys from Trigonometry and a lady called Mary Eberstadt. This is very interesting. Just mainly it was about the sexual revolution and identity politics and the way that the sexual revolution, the impacts of the sexual revolution over time. Um, it was interesting. It was really interesting. Mary Eberstadt is a Catholic and she's a conservative. She obviously seems to also be liberal-minded in many ways. Very intelligent, and it was a really, really interesting interview going into the effects of what we had always taken to be an unalloyed positive, really, in terms of the sexual revolution, in many ways, or which we, my generation, grew up thinking that anyway. And I was born in 1958, so it's all an interesting subject, and I found myself very much agreeing with with Mary Eberstadt in many ways. In terms of the negative impact of the stuff that happened in the 1960s and the decay of stable family and marriage, which are basic things in life, and the problems encountered when people's childhoods are sort of like atomized and fragmented in that way. With children having less role models, having less people to learn from, with there being less fathers involved in actual families and things like that, which has a very bad effect on boys, it seems. It's hardly surprising. But the thing is, one's not allowed to say that now, because then that makes it sound like you're punching down on single mothers, and that's really not the point. The point is the children, rather than thinking about the mothers or fathers as such. You've got to think about what are actually in the interests of the children, because the children are meant to be the point of having children, and the idea that it's some sort of unconditional good just to have children and produce children. It's kind of like a weird thing, really. You can see the results. But anyway, I found myself agreeing with a lot of what Mary Eberstadt said, and at the same time, as a gay man, I am not in that equation, because obviously the sexual revolution, there are aspects to it which were very good for gay people, but also aspects which have simply exacerbated the negatives in terms of dysfunction among gay men, I think. And so I find myself in this sort of like in this intermediate area, in a sense. And I would think quite a lot of gay men would, I think, who aren't simply assimilated into modern LGBTQ ideology, which becomes this, again, it becomes this identity which replaces real community, it replaces family and things like that. Because the trouble for a gay man is that you go into life, and in terms of family and children, which is the universal projection of an emotional future for human beings in general, that future isn't there for you. And so there is a space, a vacuum, and that vacuum needs to be filled, and people fill it with various things, and identity is one of the things that people fill it with. Now, the gay community does have a lot of dysfunction. It really does. You can see that. The levels of suicide and substance abuse amongst gay men have really not declined, despite us getting, in a country like Britain, we have all the rights that you could possibly reasonably have, yeah, we actually have equality. I mean, that's not to say that, gay people are universally accepted, but like what goes on in people's heads and hearts is not the business of the law. It's not the business of rights. You have no right to other people's opinions. You have no right to other people's hearts, if you see what I mean. So we have all our rights. And so you need something that will fill the gap. Otherwise you get a lot of bad effects. That will fill this space or this void where family should be, where an emotional future should be with children and carrying on with the current of life, if you like. And it's something which is very much played down as if that's, well, you just should get over that. But you're a human being, you have to find something somewhere, somehow. And I'm not saying I know what the answer to that is, but I think you have to be aware of the lacks. You have to be aware of the gaps as you go forward, yeah? And it doesn't mean that you have to put yourself in the mold of typical heterosexual life. You may not be able to, yeah. But the thing is, you have to acknowledge your needs, and your needs are common with the rest of humanity, most essentially. And so that's something that occurs to me. It is just funny because I find myself looking at society and what I see going wrong with it, and my positions on a lot of it are fairly conservative with a small c, because it seems to me that we do need to conserve, and we've had rather a lot of ideological experimentation, which is always a matter of deferred success. It never works, but we're going to keep on trying because the ideology says this is what should be done. It's a very strange thing. Another issue that came up with Mary's talk or interview was the place of religion, and I think the place of religion is important. You can call this spirituality if you like, but the thing is, religion has been the way that we transmit value and that we transmit stability and all sorts of things, yeah, for good or bad. There's been lots of problems, obviously, and there's been lots of cases where religions have acted appallingly, and they've acted appallingly with respect to the well-being of gay men and lesbians and what have you, and all sorts of people. That's obvious. But nevertheless, spirituality is one of the important things, and spirituality is one thing that, institution and exclusion aside, gay people have an unconditional access to. Your connection with spirituality cannot be regulated. It cannot be taken away from you, yeah? So this is one place where you potentially have a very important void which can be filled. And I think it's good for gay men to think about that. And I would always say to young gay men, your spirituality is very, very important. It will take you through a lot of things, just as determining what your values are, what it is for you to be a good man, yeah? You need to determine what that is, and you need to find ways to hold to it. You need a vertical access to life to stop it being collapsed into something which is infinitely exploitable and indefinitely unstable. And so I always say you need that vertical access, and you need spirituality, and spirituality is very important for gay men. What kind of spirituality? Well, that's not necessarily an easy question to answer. I've been various things in my life. I've been I'm essentially a pagan, yeah, but just not the general kind of like, hippie pagan type, really, not anymore anyway. And I found things in there and in that connection with polytheism, which has helped me. Yeah. And it has always helped me, actually. It's always come through. Because we need something which will treat sex and sexuality in a way which is appropriate for us. Yeah. And we have to find a way of what's appropriate for us being able to harmonize with the mass of society, which is different to us, you know. Because things that work for us don't necessarily work for the mass of society, and things which work for the mass of society don't always work for us. So, you know, it kind of carries on like this. But the spirituality is important. You can't avoid your questions. You can't avoid the things which have no answers for you as yet. You can't avoid the things which are painful or failed. You have to come to terms with them and learn to live with them and bear them and try and do what's right for you all the same, and try and do what is right all the same. That's important, I think, to understand, have a sense of what is right rather than what's good for me, you know. It's important because you need that sense of value, you need that sense of the good, and you need a sense of virtue in life. It doesn't matter who you are, you know. I don't care who you are, you know. You can be a big bad leather man, and good for you. I like that. But you need a sense of what is right. You need to be a good man, and that's just what I'd say. So, yep, quite interesting, really. All sorts of things swimming around there. Anyway, have a good day, and I'll speak soon, hopefully.